The ballroom of the Grand Metropolitan Hotel shimmered like a dream. Golden chandeliers cascaded light over marble floors, crystal glasses clinked with laughter, and tuxedos and diamond gowns brushed shoulders as the wealthiest people in the world gathered for the Global Investors Summit. To the outsiders, it was a place of elegance. But inside, it was a battlefield of power where a single handshake could create billionaires, and a single wrong word could destroy reputations overnight. In that ocean of wealth, one man stood quietly at the back. His suit was pressed but modest, his tie slightly faded, and his shoes polished so thoroughly that the leather shone despite years of wear. He looked out of place, not because of who he was, but because of who he wasn't. His name was Daniel Brooks, a single father, a war veteran, and a man who had survived battles both on the field and in life. No one knew that in the next hour, this quiet veteran would bring a billionaire CEO to his knees. Not with money, not with power, but with dignity. Daniel's life before the summit. Daniel hadn't planned to be at the summit. He had only come to the hotel because his daughter, Emily, had been invited to a school leadership workshop in one of the conference halls. He had some time before the session ended, so he wandered into the lobby, curious about the glamorous event he had heard about on the news. His life had never been about glamour. Years earlier, Daniel had served as a sergeant in the army. He had seen deserts that swallowed men whole, nights where the sound of gunfire echoed until dawn, and days where he carried both the weight of his gear and the burden of lives lost under his command. When he returned home, he was welcomed as a hero, but a hero's welcome didn't pay the bills. His wife, Anna, had been his anchor, the one who always believed in him. But a tragic car accident took her life when Emily was only 5 years old. From that day forward, Daniel had to play two roles: mother and father. He worked as a warehouse loader by day, a night security guard by evening, and sometimes as a driver on weekends. There were nights he went hungry just to make sure Emily had enough. He patched up his shoes until the soles nearly fell off, and he counted pennies at the grocery store while pretending to Emily that everything was fine. But through all of it, he never complained. His service had taught him one thing: endurance is the mark of strength. On the other side of life stood Charles Hamilton, CEO of Hamilton Global Enterprises. He was tall, impeccably dressed in a custom Italian suit worth more than Daniel's yearly salary, and carried an air of arrogance that made people both fear and admire him. Charles was the talk of the summit that night. He was expected to close a $3.5 billion deal with Eleanor Stanton, the powerful head of Stanton International. It was a deal that would cement Hamilton Global as the largest infrastructure developer in North America. Charles thrived on the spotlight. Cameras loved him, journalists quoted him, and investors worshipped him. But behind the smile was a man who saw people not as humans, but as tools. He believed money excused arrogance, and he had little patience for anyone who didn't meet his standard of power. And that night, his arrogance would cost him everything. The encounter. Daniel stood near the refreshment table, holding a glass of water. He was observing quietly, trying not to draw attention, when Charles spotted him. The billionaire paused, smirk tugging at his lips, and whispered something to his group of investors. Then, in a voice loud enough for the entire table to hear, Charles mocked. "Who let the janitor crash the summit? Or wait, maybe he's a lost soldier looking for the charity gala. This is a billion-dollar room, not a discount store." Laughter erupted around him. Daniel froze. His heart pounded, not from shame, but from restraint. He had faced bullets and explosions. A room of arrogant men wasn't going to break him. But when Charles stepped closer, sneering, Daniel's composure was tested. "You know," Charles said, his voice dripping with mockery, "men like you are too stupid to survive in business. That's why you follow orders instead of giving them. Soldiers don't think, they just obey. That's why you'll always be beneath men like me." The room fell silent. The insult had gone too far. Daniel straightened his posture. His voice was calm but carried the weight of truth. "You're wrong. Soldiers think more than you realize. We think about survival, about strategy, about how to keep our brothers alive. We think about sacrifice, not for money, but for values. Leadership isn't barking orders. It's earning respect. And respect is something you clearly know nothing about. The words hung heavy in the air. Whispers rippled through the room. Some nodded subtly, others avoided eye contact, too afraid to react. Charles forced a laugh, brushing it off. Touching little speech, soldier. But speeches don't win billion-dollar contracts. He turned away, smirking, thinking the moment was over. He was wrong. The turning point. Across the room, Eleanor Stanton had been watching the exchange closely. Elegant, sharp, and commanding respect without needing to raise her voice, Eleanor was a woman who had built her empire on integrity. She had lost her brother, a soldier, years ago. His memory lived in her heart, and she carried with her the lessons of his bravery. When she heard Charles mock Daniel, calling him stupid and dismissing his service, she felt a sharp pain, an echo of her own brother's sacrifice. But what struck her most was Daniel's response. He didn't shout. He didn't. The room watched as Eleanor stepped forward, her heels clicking sharply against the marble. All eyes turned to her. "Mr. Hamilton," she said, her voice clear and unwavering, "I was prepared tonight to sign a $3.5 billion deal with your company. But after what I just witnessed, I cannot and will not." Gasps filled the room. Charles blinked in disbelief. "Eleanor, surely you're not serious. This is a misunderstanding." But Eleanor didn't waver. "No, Charles. A man's true character is revealed in how he treats those he thinks are beneath him. Tonight, you revealed yours. And I will never put Stanton International's name beside a man who mocks those who fight for our freedom." She turned, facing Daniel. Her expression softened. "Sergeant Brooks, I thank you for your service and for reminding us what real leadership looks like." The applause that followed wasn't thunderous, it was quiet, respectful, and powerful. Charles stood frozen, his empire crumbling in the space of a single sentence. The fallout. By morning, the headlines were everywhere. Billionaire CEO loses $3.5 billion deal after mocking veteran. Veteran humiliates arrogant CEO at Global Summit. Respect over riches, investor cancels historic deal in defense of soldier. Charles's phone rang endlessly, investors backing out, shareholders panicking, employees resigning. His arrogance had finally caught up with him. Meanwhile, Daniel's life began to change. Not because he wanted fame, he didn't. But because the world had finally seen him. Daniel's true battle. Behind the sudden attention, Daniel still faced the same struggles. He still had bills to pay, still worried about his daughter's education, still battled the memories of war at night. But now, people wanted to hear his voice. Schools invited him to speak about resilience. Companies asked him to teach leadership workshops. Veterans organizations reached out, wanting him to represent them. For the first time in years, Daniel felt like he wasn't fighting alone. Emily, his daughter, watched in awe. She hugged him one evening and said, "Dad, you may not be rich like those men, but you're the richest man I know. You've given me everything that matters." And Daniel, holding back tears, realized she was right. The lesson. Charles Hamilton lost billions, but what Daniel gained was priceless: respect, dignity, and the chance to inspire thousands. The story became a reminder to the world: true wealth isn't measured in money, but in how we treat others. And Daniel Brooks proved that even a man with nothing but integrity can stand taller than the richest billionaire. Closing message for viewers. So the next time you see someone being mocked for being less, remember Daniel's story. Respect is worth more than gold. Backhand index pointing right. I want to hear from you. Do you believe money or respect holds more power in life? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Thumbs up if this story moved you. Please like this video, share it with friend.